Welcome back to Not Again, the podcast that brings college-level analysis to preschool-level content. I am one of your hosts, Rebecca. I do the play-by-play.
I'm your other host, Alan. I'm your color commentator.
And we finally have a tagline. It only took us 6 episodes. You'll have to forgive us. I know that we're putting the cart before the horse when we did 5 episodes. Well, technically 6 because the Cars episode is coming out at some point without knowing what our tagline was. But I wanted it to come naturally.
Well, yeah. Can't force these things.
I thought that would, like once I really kind of did the show a lot, that it would kind of come to me, and it did finally. So I'm going to stick with that one. We finally have a show intro.
All right.
And it's accurate. But if you want more of an explanation of what this show is about and why we're doing it, please feel free to go back and listen to episode 1 if you haven't already. And let's be honest, episodes 2 and 3, because I couldn't stop introducing what this show was about for a while. So I thought by now people might be wondering if we're going to be on Corey Carson forever. I have to say, folks, that this episode is going to be a doozy, as is probably the next episode. But we are not going to be on Corey Carson forever, so I thought I'd let our gentle, wonderful listeners know what's coming down the line. So first of all, definitely scheduled for after Go Corey Carson is Finding Nemo. Part 1 and 2? What do you think?
Yeah, probably. It's a whole movie. We might need we're not going to do a seriously long episode. We might have to break it up.
Yeah, I mean, Finding Nemo, first of all, is very long for an animated movie. I mean, that takes a lot of time. But we have seen it approximately 9,972 times.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so we have a lot to say. And so I'm thinking it's going to be part 1, part 2. I would not be surprised if it got to part 3, but I think people would want us to keep it to 2.
Yeah, I think 2 is probably the right number.
So we are definitely going to move on to Finding Nemo. And after that, a show you may not have heard of called Super Wings. If you haven't heard of that, that's wonderful, I think. I mean,
your life is better for it.
Your life is better for it. And I think that people who have listened to previous episodes will know that I hate that show. I hate everything about it. As far as like me yelling at the TV goes, that show is the one that I yell at the most. So we're going to get into Super Wings, but we're going to do that one in a bit of an unorthodox fashion. Not that we have an orthodox for us at this point, but we're going to talk more about the premise of the show and just like touch on like snippets from episodes that they've done. Because I believe season 1 of that show alone is 50 episodes.
Wow.
I think so. We'll fact check that by the time we get to it.
Yeah.
And then here's just a list of some other things that you can look forward to. I have absolutely no idea what order they'll be in. We're definitely going to talk about The Secret Life of Pets 2. Not the first one, because the first one's not on streaming.
And I haven't seen it.
Yep. Warren calls that one Puppy.
Puppy.
Yep, because it's got dogs in it. And we've seen Secret Life of Pets 2 not as many times as Finding Nemo. I would say only 1,911 times.
Yeah.
And we have Peppa Pig.
Yes.
And I think we could do Peppa Pig and Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom
together. We could do like 2 shorter episodes. Maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, like they're made by the same people.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of doing
one is way better than the other.
Exactly. I was thinking about doing a compare and contrast. And then My Neighbor Totoro, or in Japanese, Tonari no Totoro, which I have a very unpopular opinion about, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
We also have things like Little Bus Tayo and Titipo. We have Ratatouille, possibly Daniel Tiger. I'm hoping not Rescue Riders. And he's discovered now, the bane of my existence, he's discovered Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which I'm hoping I never actually see, and something called Octonauts, which unfortunately I have seen.
Yeah.
And I'm just so confused. Can I just say real quick, why do cartoons keep making cartoon characters with eye patches? Like, why someone needs an eye patch?
Yeah, trauma.
Yeah, trauma that has removed or disabled an eye.
Yeah.
And it's just like, look how cute, that kitty has an eye patch. So that cat has been stabbed in the eye at some point? Is that it? Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting a little
I think we might be able to skip Rescue Riders because he has not watched that show in a long time.
I would love to skip Rescue Riders, but it is also fodder for good comedy.
I suppose that's true.
So we've talked about this enough, but I also want to talk about our hopefully recurring segment, which I have affectionately called Alan Guesses the Plot. We did, when we were still practicing podcasting, we did an episode on Disney Pixar's Cars, and Alan had not seen it at the time, and I had several times because Warren was watching it on Disney Plus.
On your phone.
On my phone.
Yeah.
And so we did a segment where Alan tried to guess what the plot of Cars was without knowing anything about Cars. And I'm hoping that we can also do that for the movie called Trolls, and because I've seen that one and Alan hasn't. And so we have a lot of things coming down the line. Lots of different show formats, things like that. Okay. But for now, we are going to get...
One thing I wanted to clear, I think, I don't know if we mentioned this, but we have this episode and the next episode are going to be on Carson, and then we're going to stop there.
So happy almost Halloween. Yeah. On Halloween, we will be releasing Go Corey Carson, season 1, episode 7, and then we're going to move on. We're done with Corey Carson. Yeah. The reason that we chose to go through all of season 1 of Corey Carson was, 1, as you'll see, there's a lot to talk about, and 2, it would just help us get our podcasting sea legs.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we're going to make a plan of going through any particular show episode by episode ever again.
And there's a lot more Corey Carson. There's another season. They have like specials. I think there's a Halloween special that just came out, but I don't think we're going to try and avoid watching that personally and talking.
We have seen season 2, and we've seen the movie where there's the rainbow train or whatever, and Corey and Chrissy do a dance. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
But we'll probably leave that unless we run out of ideas or something. So we are doing Corey Carson episode 6 today and episode 7 next week. Episode 6 is called Sleepover, and I have to issue another content warning because very much like last episode, but worse, in my opinion, we are going to have to talk about bodily functions.
Yes.
And it's going to get weird.
This show gets weird sometimes. We're going to try and keep it, PG, but as we always do,
it's going to get weird.
It's weird.
So, with that being said, let's talk about Corey Carson episode 6, Sleepover. Mr. Carson is taking Corey over to the O'Toole's house for a sleepover. This should not be too hard to wrap our heads around. The episode's titled Sleepover. The O'Tooles are the construction trucks that we talked about before. Kimmy and Timmy, I'm going to say twins, even though they're different equipment.
Yeah, one's a wrecking ball, one's a loader.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And their father is Mr. O'Toole, who is an excavator, and we're going to meet their mother. Let's leave that a surprise for now. Yeah. So Kimmy and Timmy, they're on the street, like outside the house, and Kimmy and Timmy tackle Corey and roughhouse with him, prompting Mr. Carson to say, "Be careful, he's precious." And again, I wonder when this guy is going to have his mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Because he's just like so fragile. I think. So he's fragile about his son.
Yeah, there might be something to say about the class divide there. Like they're working class, they're rough and tumble, and he's like, "Oh, my precious child."
Spoiler alert: there's only things to say about the class divide in this episode, and we are going to have to talk about this a lot.
Jumping the gun a little bit.
No, you're not. We're just going to be talking about it a lot. So they go into the house, and I don't know, Mr. Carson leaves, whatever. And Kimmy and Timmy clock in. They get punch cards. Yep. And they clock in as they enter their house.
Yeah.
Because they are a family of working class vehicles, by which I mean construction in the human world is what we would call working class.
I mean, it's not a professional degree or whatever. So
a very useful profession. I want to get this. I have put my foot in my mouth twice, as far as I remember. No, 3 times, I think, on this podcast, where I say things like, I imply that Carlos, Carmina, and Carly aren't normal names, which is not what I meant. I meant
the car recurring thing is abnormal.
Yeah, the car recurring thing is abnormal for people for cars who are cars. And I forget the other one, but I should bring it up and apologize immediately. Oh yeah, I called accounting and doctoring regular jobs, implying that
you meant professional,
firefighter and garbage man or garbage collector are not, and I did not mean that at all. I just meant that cars have all the possibilities.
Yeah, they have every possibility. Whereas if you are born a fire truck, apparently you are a firefighter,
right. So they don't have to be
regardless of desire.
Yeah, so that's what I meant. So I put my foot in my mouth a lot. I just. We'll move on.
No, blue collar, I guess. I don't know, but these are
construction is an important job, and
we wouldn't have buildings otherwise.
Yes, and
they are important.
You don't need a degree to be useful.
My brother is in construction. Yeah. He's very smart, powerful, whatever person. I look up to him.
jobs are important even if you haven't gone to 4 years of college or grad school or even high school. Like if you're doing a job, you're doing a service and it's great. And, and capitalism demands you make money. So however you do that is admirable. But they are a construction family. Yeah. Mr. O'Toole, let's say it. I'm sorry for using this term. He has a trucker stash.
Oh,
it's the
yeah.
one that looks,
Yep.
It's the mustache that goes down the sides of the chin, but there's no actual beard on the chin itself. Yeah. And so this is gonna be a big thing. So they clock in, and Corey asks why they're doing that. And they say they don't know why they do it. It's just that their grandpa did it, their dad does it, and it's tradition.
Right.
So
clocking in at work is something that you do because of your family history.
Yeah. So what they're saying is they have inherited being working class from okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start with this episode. So first of all, because they are specialized equipment, we were just talking about this. Because they are construction vehicles, they are in construction.
Yeah.
If Kimmy and Timmy want to do jobs that are not in construction, they cannot, as far as this world is telling us.
Yeah.
They're going to grow up and they're going to go into the family business and they don't have a choice because their bodies dictate what they do.
Yeah.
Second of all, the idea that certain families just belong in a certain class or a certain job.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit off topic. There are children of lawyers and doctors who go into plumbing because it's a great profession.
Makes a lot of money.
Makes a lot of money. You get to help people, work with your hands, solve problems, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be one directional either. It's, we're down here, in quotes, as construction equipment, and we can't aspire to any higher. Some people want to be in construction.
Yeah. And again, as we pointed out, it's kind of a necessary profession for people to do.
I don't know why.
There's this weird paradox in the country where people believe that everybody should be working their way up to CEO, as if we didn't need other people to just
as if we shouldn't value people who build bridges.
Cook your food, build your bridges, build your houses, repair your plumbing. We need that too.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I wrote in my notes, I said that these vehicles are different from suburban middle-class Corey, and this point will be driven home, no pun intended, geez.
A lot of times.
Again and again. So I wrote no pun intended to myself. So Corey meets Mrs. O'Toole. That's the next thing we have.
Okay.
Mrs. O'Toole is cooking dinner using construction equipment to drop peas and carrots or whatever.
Like conveyor belts
on a conveyor belt.
And cranes and stuff.
And she is a
cement truck.
Cement mixer. Yes, that's what I wrote.
Mixer.
Okay, she is a cement mixer. This is important because somebody somewhere had an idea and they were never told it might be a bad idea.
Yes.
So that's called foreshadowing. See, the English teacher in me never really goes away. I'm foreshadowing. So Mrs. O'Toole is a cement mixer because she's also in construction. So here's another thing. Can Mr. O'Toole not marry a non-construction vehicle if he wants to? Are they?
They're trapped in their little world.
Yeah, I mean,
by force of society.
This is a really loaded word, so I don't know if I should say it, but it seems like segregation, where they're just kind of they are given their place to be and who they can and can't marry, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So she's cooking, and she says that she hopes Corey likes constructor's pie, and Corey is amazed that they have pie for dinner because his little middle-class brain is thinking of a fruit pie dessert.
Yes.
Right? And not what construction workers eat, which is obviously savory pot pies.
Right.
I hope the sarcasm is coming through here.
Yeah, I don't really know where that idea came from.
Yeah, so, apparently we're looking at food that belongs to a certain class now as well. So there's this huge comedic misunderstanding where he thinks she's talking about apple pie, but she's talking about pot pie. Like some kind of weirdo who eats pot pie. I guess Corey is too high class for that particular dish.
Yeah, as opposed to microwaved broccoli or whatever he had in the other episode.
Croissants belong to the middle class.
Oh yeah, well, I suppose that's a fancy food.
Yeah, so he's amazed by this. So he thinks that they're talking about fruit pie. And that's going to come back later. So she's cooking dinner. And I guess, I don't know. I was going to talk about, like, housewife, like, does she have a job?
I was thinking about that too, because she's very purpose-built. She's a cement mixer.
Right.
She has an important job in society, which is mixing cement, but she doesn't do any of that. Everybody else in the family gets to, smash things and load things, and she's just making dinner.
Now, again, there's nothing wrong with being a housewife or a house spouse. I like that term better. If you prefer to stay at home with the kids, I just wonder about, like, can she, if she has that specialized body, is she, like, required to work?
I don't know. Yeah. There are a lot of unanswered questions about, like, how
this episode. Yeah. This episode's going to go long. I can tell already. It's because I spent 5 minutes telling people what we were going to be talking about, but not yet. Yeah. So Corey discovers that this family has a steam whistle in their house that shrieks loudly to mark different times of day. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's playtime. Yeah. After he meets Mrs. O'Toole. So the three young vehicles go to play, but they accidentally run into a glass pane in the wall and knock it over. Mm-hmm. Mr. O'Toole, at this point, the excavator, he comes home and clocks in. And he fakes angry that they knocked over the glass, but then, surprise, he says they just didn't knock it over good enough.
Yeah.
He's like, what did I tell you? You got to put your back into it. Not your back. I forget what he says, but axle?
I don't know. He says something vehicle-related. It was kind of strange because Timmy and
Kimmy. Timmy and Kimmy
act scared, like they don't know that it's okay to knock stuff over, even though apparently they do that every day during playtime.
And he literally said, "I told you to do this," so it's like, why are they worried?
I think it was just for the audience to be like, oh, they're in trouble, and like, no, they're not.
Here, I'll play devil's advocate. Maybe they looked upset simply because their dad was acting angry, and they didn't expect that.
Maybe.
We'll go with that.
Sure.
I will defend this show very few times, but that will work, I guess. So he uses his big ol' excavator scoop to knock over a wall or whatever, show them how it's done, and Kimmy and Timmy go back to breaking walls, and that gives Corey another reason to be amazed at how different their life is. And I'm going to jump in here and say that clearly this episode is going for the moral that just because something is different doesn't mean that it's bad. Mm-hmm. People have their differences, but we're all people and,
car creatures.
Or car creatures in this case. But I mean, this is the what have we learned?
Yeah, we'll get there.
But they are mixing their metaphors. I don't know. They're mixing their something because they're not talking about differences the way shows typically teach kids about differences, which is differences in appearance, because we try to, teach kids not to be racist.
Yeah.
Or anything else, different religions, different races, different nationalities, we're all the same. That's usually the lesson. In this case, their nationality, their body type is a class, not a race or a national. And so it's not about respecting differences. It's about saying that these people are different because they're in a different class, which is actually worse to make that claim. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know, we have it established earlier that he at least knows Mr. O'Toole a little bit, and Kimmy and Jimmy, or whatever it was, Timmy are in his preschool class, so like it shouldn't be that weird of a culture clash to him. Like he should understand much more of this already.
But he hasn't been to their house yet.
I guess.
And at their house they do things differently. And again, I'm reminded, so this is a deep cut for just because it's so long ago, but there was a show I sort of watch sometimes called The Proud Family. It was on the Disney Channel, and it followed a black family, which is great because like the Cosby Show. I shouldn't bring that up, I suppose, because but it was kind of groundbreaking. You don't see a lot of shows that are non-white based people that based on non-white people, but it followed a black family, and the main character did like a cultural exchange with I think a Muslim family, and she like learned about Ramadan and things like that, and she learned to respect their cultural and religious differences, right? So here's Corey going to this construction house and learning about their cultural differences, but the implication here is that in the real world that we live in, construction people, like people in construction,
working class people are a different culture.
They have a different culture. And hey, some people might say, hey, we do things differently. This is, whatever. But like the word culture is so loaded, and they are clearly coding it as a culture. Yeah. I don't think that they handled this right at all.
No.
And I should move on as well. But yeah, so that's it. As people can tell, it gets very problematic. So the steam whistle sounds again, and Corey shouts from surprise every time he hears it because it's just so different and unexpected for him. And it's time for dinner. That's what this steam whistle means. Okay, so it's time for dinner.
It's time for dinner.
All right. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So here's where that content warning comes into play. Corey goes to stand, exist. He scoots over to not scoot at the table and discovers, as Mr. O'Toole excavates some pie, the pie is huge, it's enormous, and he uses his excavator scoop to excavate pie for everyone on their plates, that this is a savory pie. And it appears as a green blob on his plate with vegetables and bits of crust stuck into it. And he is off-put by its appearance. We'll say that. Okay. Mrs. O'Toole, who is... I'm going to try to get through this, and I'm going to try to keep it on the level. Mrs. O'Toole, who is a cement mixer, asked Corey if he would like mashed potatoes on his pie. He tentatively says yes. At which point, she turns around and extends a chute from her backside and allows liquidy, hot, bubbling mashed potatoes to flow from her back area down this chute onto his food where it bubbles a bit.
You can't see me cringing.
I mean, Alan is getting through this just like not comfortably, and neither am I.
Nor should you.
I'm trying so hard to remember how this scene came into our lives because, correct me if I'm wrong, the memory's a little shady. I think I saw it first.
Yeah.
I was watching Warren and I saw it first. I think I wanted to bring it up to you, but then I think you saw it independently of that and brought it up to me, and I was like, I know exactly what scene you're talking about.
I think you tried to say something about it to me, and I was like not... I was in the middle of something or whatever, and I was like, that sounds weird. And then I sort of like forgot about it. And then I saw it, and I was really grossed out. And
yes, that's what happened. Yeah, you were talking, and I was like, remember I told you about this?
Yeah.
We discussed this scene with each other because, oh my goodness.
She's mixing up the potatoes inside her body.
But there's only one way for the mashed potatoes to come out of her body. And this is where... Okay, so this is story time. My best friend and I were sitting in a movie theater a long time ago, back when we could do that. And a trailer came on for the live-action Bratz movie. And she held up a finger and she went, how did this make it past... I have an idea. And I laughed very hard. And we have used that as a phrase when things are inexplicably brought to fruition that have no logic or reasoning behind them. And this is one of those times where somebody had an idea where they were like, how can we have fun with this world? And like, what if the cement mixer had mashed potatoes and that's how she made mashed potatoes? And they at no point said, yeah, but it's going to look like she is defecating onto Corey's plate. No one said that. It somehow made it past the point of, I have an idea.
I hope no one said that, because if somebody said that and then they said, yeah, that's why it's funny,
that's true.
I would have, that's worse.
Yeah, to have them have that discussion and be like, yeah, it's a poop joke. And honestly, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but we are going to discuss this because it's in my notes. In Finding Nemo, but poop jokes in kids media.
Yeah.
So hopefully they didn't go that route, I guess. I will also say, by the way, if you are sitting here listening to this or standing, if you're listening to the podcast and standing,
if you're scooting to this
and you just for some reason desire to see what we are talking about, or maybe you doubt us, maybe you think it couldn't possibly be that bad, you can go ahead and go to Facebook and look up Not Again Podcast, like our page. The cover photo, is that what they call it? The background?
Yeah, cover photo.
The cover photo on our Facebook page is a screen cap of this moment. I couldn't resist. I could not resist. I found this moment and I took a screenshot and I made it our cover photo because I think it encapsulates what this podcast is about. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. Or maybe if you're already liking our page, you've already seen it and you were like, what is this? Now you know. Okay, so you finally have context for that disturbing image. Maybe I'll change it one day. Maybe I won't. And here's the fun fact. after all this discussion, I have to also point out she does not offer the mashed potatoes to any of her family members. she scoots up to Corey, is like, hey, do you want me to drop some potatoes on your plate? And he's like, sure. And then they just all start eating. And it's like, do her family members not really like seeing mom turn her backside to their dinner?
I mean, maybe, or maybe she's just goofing on Corey. She's like, this rube doesn't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Let's prank the 5-year-old. That's always fun.
You gotta find your fun wherever you can get it.
I hate this scene so much. I knew that this entire episode was going to be about this scene. We have to move on because I really wanted this show to be only about 30 minutes, bite-sized pieces or whatever. But oh my goodness.
All right.
And what is that saying again about, like, again, we're coding these people as culturally construction, and like, what are they trying to say about people in construction? It's like with Gary Garbage saying he's smelly. Are they saying people in construction are gross? Like, I don't, and they're not. Okay, they're people. Okay, but these are cars. So we just keep running into issues with making sentient car universes. Corey does not want to eat his working class food. That's what I wrote in the notes. He does not want to eat the working class food. It's so different and it looks yucky. And he's so spoiled by his middle class lifestyle. By the way, what did his parents do? Nobody knows.
Yeah, they don't really clarify their work situation.
Yeah. And then
perhaps they are kept.
And yes, they have a trust fund that they're still dipping into. And then it is time for sleep. The O'Toole children sleep outside in a thing that I still haven't looked up because I don't even know what I put into Google.
I think it's like some sort of mining equipment where like it kind of like hauls stuff from underneath.
Yeah, there are buckets.
There's buckets of...
okay. Imagine a Ferris wheel, but like one of those carnival Ferris wheels where you get into like a cage and it goes around. And so it's like that, but instead of Ferris wheel carts, it's little buckets of dirt.
Yeah.
And they go up and around or whatever, and it helps to dig
know.
stuff out.
Maybe
or
it's so you can load a
I don't know what
a dump truck more easily or something. I actually don't know the piece.
You know what? We are always so ignorant on this podcast, and then we beg people to tell us. So
tweet us what that is, and we will have learned something.
Yeah, if you know the name of this construction equipment, tweet at NotAgainPod and let us know.
The Ferris wheel of buckets of dirt.
The first person to tweet at us gets a prize. Now I'm going to have to follow through with that, but whatever.
Postcard.
We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Yeah, postcard of that image of Mrs. O'Toole and potatoes. So they go to sleep in these buckets of dirt. Okay, and I said that this point would be driven home, no pun intended, but oh my God, they sleep in buckets of dirt. What are you saying about working class people, Corey Carson?
Working class people sleep in beds after showering, probably.
Yeah.
They don't sleep in buckets of dirt.
Outside. They sleep outside because they're of the earth, right? Like, oh my God. Okay. So, so every kid gets their own bucket of dirt. And Mr. O'Toole tucks them in by excavating a pile of dirt on top of them and then patting it down a bit. Yeah. That's their blanket, is more dirt.
More dirt.
And Corey, who's uncomfortable with this, still asks for a nightlight. And because we are in an Amelia Bedelia situation, they bring out this super bright construction site light that they use for like doing construction at night.
Yeah, so it's like really, really bright.
It blazes with the power of 1,000 suns and makes a humming noise, and it's like aimed right at Corey. And I wrote in my notes, these working class cars just don't understand. Oh, they're so ignorant. Like, don't say that. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem with this is that we are, as people watching the show, we are always going to associate the cars we see with the people that they are metaphorically representing.
On purpose.
On purpose. And that's something that the showrunners should know, and they should not be saying these things. Construction people are just people who have a job that they do, and they're not ignorant. Or some of them are, but some of every group of people are ignorant.
No more ignorant
than anybody else. Like that's what the important thing is if we're grouping people together.
That is what we should be learning today, but we are not.
If we're grouping people together in arbitrary ways, we should know never to make a blanket statement about them. And so anyway, so Corey can't sleep because he has this horrible blazing nightlight on him. So he leaves his dirt bed and goes to call his dad on a phone, by the way. Which is like on the floor, and the buttons are really big so that he could press them with his tire. And there's like a speaker. It's not a phone.
Okay.
It's imagine Charlie's Angels. Like there's like a hub. And he calls his dad for, I guess, a ride home, because that's what a human child would be asking for, except that he doesn't need that.
Yeah, cars don't need rides.
So I wrote escort. He needs an escort home because he can't just like drive home in his incredibly safe neighborhood or scoot home.
Scooting.
In his by himself. So yeah, this is another fun scene. I feel like we've gotten so, like, I've been watching our levels and we got so aggravated that like all the lines are like all over the place. So like, because this episode really riles us up.
All right, yeah. You should have an ear safety warning at the beginning.
And I talk really fast, as people probably by now know, and this can't have helped if me getting like high pitched and squeaky and aggravated as well. But Mr. O'Toole catches Corey calling home. And he, and like Corey's dad picks up and is like, Corey, hello. And Corey rapidly hangs up, but Mr. O'Toole goes, oh, like he gets what's going on. And he says, exact quote, "Things aren't quite the same at our house, are they?" And Corey doesn't know how to respond. So Mr. O'Toole continues to say, "You know, we come from a very different place. When I first moved to Bumperton Hills," gag me. Sorry, he doesn't say gag me. I'm saying gag me.
I didn't know that was what it was called.
Yeah, when I first moved to Bumperton Hills, I couldn't believe how strange it was. People sleeping indoors, so clean and neat. It was a whole new world for us. And that happened.
Yeah, apparently they live in like filth hole flats or something.
Yeah, I think I called it Carlandia once.
Carlandia, yeah.
It's Bumperton Hills.
Bumperton Hills.
"Everyone's so clean here," says the construction truck. "We don't know how to be clean. It was so weird for us." I'm like, I wish I could bang my head against a wall. Okay. So let's unpack that. So just because something's different doesn't mean it's bad, says Mr. O'Toole, literally saying the intended lesson of the episode out loud. And yeah, no, I mean, like, let's say this.
Okay.
He's correct.
Yeah.
Just because someone or something is different does not make it bad. Like,
that's good.
Differences actually help. I mean, there's a reason that variety is the spice of life is a phrase that we say. But this just, I think, is the final nail in the coffin of the message that this show is sending about people in construction, people in the working class differences at all. Like the fact that there are class differences and they're so different from us and they sleep in dirt and they don't know how to be clean. Like, what?
That's pretty rough.
I think the problem that we get to here is that the assuming the showrunners care, which is entirely possible they don't. But the showrunners think that we are going to say, this is a world of cars, not a world of people. Therefore, there is no equivalency, and it's just like their cars, full stop.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works, as we've been discussing. Like we are people watching this, and so we are going to be drawing associations to the real world that we live in. There is no, don't worry, it's a car world, so we're not saying this about people, we're only saying this about cars. Except for when I accidentally insult the name Carlos, Carmina, or Carly, then I am saying it's only about the world of cars and not about the world of people. Those are normal names for people. So we're not going to just be like, oh, they're cars. They're not sending a message about people. They're sending a message about cars.
Yeah, well, and they're trying to teach us something like that. I mean, nominally anyway. There's supposed to be a moral to every episode.
It's true. So what they're saying is take the lesson away that we're teaching you, but don't
actually think about it.
So the lesson we're teaching applies to your world, but not anything else that we do. Nothing else applies to your world. It's completely separate and divorced, and yeah, we're not making a commentary, but they are. They absolutely are, and it's a total gap. So go ahead.
You can't make anything without it being a commentary. That's just part of any form of art. It comes from its context. I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but
absolutely, and but I guess I was just going to say, like, nothing exists in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Nothing exists in a vacuum. And so when you, and these are shows for preschoolers. And I was going to say also, like, I think last episode, or I think it was last episode or the episode before, I referenced the fact that this episode 5 and episode 7 would affect my overall score of this, rating of this show.
Yeah.
Because episodes 1 through 4, like, I didn't like how bratty Corey was in the firehouse episode, and I didn't like the messages that they were sending, but they were still just, like, cute and whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, this changes some stuff, and next episode will too, spoiler alert. So, and nothing exists in a vacuum. Yeah, that's all I was going to say. So, anyway, Mr. O'Toole convinces Corey that things can be different and also good, and he hears Corey's stomach rumble. Oh, excuse me, I mean the fairy princess that lives inside of him rumbles to indicate he's hungry because he doesn't have a stomach.
No.
And if you want to know about the fairy princess, you need to go back to episode... Oh, crud.
Just the one before, just oil spill, right?
Oh, yeah. Last episode.
Last episode.
Go to last episode to hear that. So Mr. O'Toole asks if he wants to try some constructor's pie now that he understands that things can be different and good. And he just drops a pile right onto the floor. No more plate.
No more plates.
Dinner table for him. Like that. He just goes, here you go, kid. Splat. And so Corey scoots right up to that pile of green mush on the floor and tries a bite by sticking his face into it, which is his windshield, because that's how cars eat. I think this is the first time we've actually seen them eat, because it's hard to see them eat. And so he tries it, and he just face plants into it, is what I said in my notes, because he doesn't have hands, so he's just like splat face into it. He says it tastes different, but quote, good different. So he's learned that there's good different. And he decides to romanticize the O'Toole's, quote, different sleeping situation by, the quotes were just around the word different, because that word is the buzzword of the day, by saying that it's cool that they sleep out under the stars, and all I wonder is what they do when it rains.
More dirt.
Yeah, maybe they're just like, yes, we are communing with nature, and so it's like, who knows, okay? And by the way, nothing wrong with sleeping outside, nothing wrong with communing with nature, nothing wrong if your culture is more of the earth or whatever. If that's
they're not camper vehicles; they're construction vehicles.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, like what the camper vehicles, are they might feel that they are being encroached on here, but yeah, I mean, there are literally like religious and spiritual beliefs that have to do with like the getting energy and power from the earth and respecting the earth and whatever. And also people who just like the environment because it provides us with oxygen to breathe. That's all fine. But I wonder what they do when it rains. Corey falls asleep on the floor, having realized that working class people aren't so different or strange after all. Or rather, I guess, realizing that they are different, but that isn't bad.
Okay.
And Mr. O'Toole picks him up and drops him back into his bed pile of dirt. I wrote in my notes, dirt nap. I apologize. So he has his dirt nap, and that's the end of the episode. And now it is time for What Have We Learned? We've already talked about this some, but let's wrap up. We can start with what they wanted kids to learn, because they said it out loud.
Oh, yes.
They said, respect people's differences.
Yes.
And let's just start right here. That is absolutely correct. I've already said that, but people are different. They just are. And something about us having frontal lobes makes us decide that like we need to nitpick these differences and overanalyze them and decide that the differences...
Decide they're way more important than they are and all that sort of stuff.
And assign...
Categorize and...
Exactly, and assign like more importance to some things than others and whatever. And so those frontal lobes are really a double-edged sword, aren't they? But... That is correct. People are different. Some people are of different cultures or whatever, or different religion or different race or different nationality or different goodness knows what. Some people are vegetarians, and it doesn't matter as long as no one is hurting anybody. This is the important thing. I'm very much of the mindset is like, let people be people, and as long as they're not hurting themselves or others, you're good. Yeah. You don't have to. I tell my students. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a little bit of a teaching thing. When I talk to my students, I teach juniors and seniors in high school. I talk to them about the word tolerance, because the word tolerance is often coded as positive, but the funny thing about it is it's quite a neutral term or even slightly negative. When you tolerate behavior, it's not because you like it, and in fact, it might be because you even dislike it.
Yeah, well, the doctor says, is the pain tolerable?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it might even skew a little negative. So I tell them, in order to tolerate somebody, you do not have to like them. You do not have to understand them.
Yeah.
You do not have to agree with them. You just have to accept that they deserve to live and breathe air safely, just like you do.
Yeah.
And I tell them that because as soon as you encroach on somebody else's ability to live their life safely, you are not being tolerant and you're being a bad person. I'll just say it. And the other thing about that is people have the right to forge their own identities. The very definition of the word identity is that it is defined by the self. So as soon as you walk up to somebody else or scoot up to somebody else and say, I have decided your identity for you,
you've done it wrong.
You're violating a lot of their self and being, and you're dehumanizing them and all that stuff. So, in short, tolerance is good. Letting people have their own identities and forge their own identities is not only good but necessary, so long as no harm is done. And by the way, if you feel like they're harming your religious beliefs or whatever, they're not, okay? Because as long as they're not forcing their beliefs onto you as you are trying to do to them, you're good, right? So we're no forcing our beliefs on one another. That's all good. I'm Jewish. I don't try to keep people from eating bacon. Let's face it, I eat bacon too. But the point is, I don't try to get them to wear kippot or whatever. But differences are what make us unique and interesting, and they should be respected, and they don't necessarily mean bad. But what does this episode actually teach us?
It has very weird things to say because they decided that the different culture was going to be working class people.
Yes. So the differences that they decided to focus on were class differences, which is a whole other kettle of fish, carfish, a whole other kettle of carfish. And on top of that, they implied that class is inherent in culture or even genetics.
Yeah, inherent in what you are born like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is wrong on so many levels that we've already gotten into. And so I think that we don't need to get into it again. I think that we made our point quite clear. But as far as what have we learned, the lesson that they intended was good. Their execution was terrible. And also, do not poop mashed potatoes onto anybody's food.
That is what we should have learned.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the showrunners needed to learn a lesson, which is don't do that. Oh my goodness, don't do that.
Don't do that.
You crossed a line there. I mean, I think my jaw dropped when I saw that scene the first time where I was like, did that just happen? Ugh. So we have run a little long. I do apologize for that. But at least it's less than 45 minutes by the time we finish up.
Hopefully with a little editing, it'll be about 40.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll cut out a lot of our, nonsense talk. So thank you to our listeners for helping us to stay sane for another week. If you would like to tweet at us at NotAgainPod for any reason to tell us what that thingy is called that we didn't know what it was called, or to tell us about the show or ask a question, please do. You can find us on Facebook, especially if you want to see that picture of our cover photo. That's Not Again Podcast. None of our social media has the exclamation point, which I find sad, but they don't allow it. And we are wrapping up on Halloween with Corey Carson episode 7, so we're looking forward to that.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Word of mouth is the best advertising.
Yes, absolutely. Please let someone know about this show. And that's that. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Alan.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.